Okay, you ready? Can you go shut the door? I know. All right.
Recording in progress.
Hello, welcome everybody. We're so excited to see such a big group on tonight. So keep sharing in the comments. We have some awesome content for you tonight. I think I say this every week, and so I'm sorry, but I've been so excited prepping this content just for what we can share together tonight. So please be willing to share your comments if you're okay with that. Tonight, we're going to start. Before we jump into the content, I just want to give a shout out to our April challenge. For those of you who may have not read the emails like I do sometimes when I have a million emails, this starts the 1st of April, which is next week. And it's kind of a no-brainer to join. It's $20 join fee. And you get it all back if you complete the challenge, and it gets all of us out and moving in April when the weather's getting nicer, and it gives us an opportunity to push ourselves and improve our fitness and do it together. So you don't even have to be a ShillMed member if you want to. If you want to join us, the link is up at the top of the chat window to sign up. It's $20 to sign up, and then you get it all back if you complete the challenge, which is the walk from Spokane Valley ShillMed office to Coeur d'Alene Lake, which is a total of 23 miles. And you can walk, run, move in the month of April. And then we have some opportunities for some bonus points, and a grand prize will go to the person who completes the most miles. So you could actually go beyond 23 to win a grand prize if you want to. So just wanted to start out with that. Okay, so we're talking tonight about changing our inner narrative. I apologize for the door sounds there. That was my 4-year-old. So the inner narrative in our head is a powerful force for either progress or the opposite of not progressing. And we're going to kind of explore what that looks like tonight. But I wanted to start off with this quote. This is from Dr. Leslie Heinberg, who has a PhD in bariatric behavioral health. I didn't know that you could get a degree in that, but she obviously has spent her whole career and her education studying behavioral health of people who are needing bariatric surgery or treatment. And she says this: when you work on reducing your guilt and shame around food and better body image acceptance, you tend to develop better eating habits over the long term. Now, initially, this might seem obvious, but just read that through again and think about the implications of that in your life. If you really focus less on the food you're eating and more on reducing your guilt and shame around food and your body image acceptance, which is what we're going to talk about tonight, then you tend to develop better eating habits. So the eating habits are actually a result of this other work that we're doing in our minds. Okay, that's powerful stuff. So why is doing the inner work, the brain work, so essential? Okay, so we've talked about this so many times on this webinar. Our brains are our superpower, right? We can accomplish so much if we can learn to drive our brains in the direction that we want them to go. And that is a lifelong process to learn how to do that, to create new pathways in our brain that can then propel us forward towards our goals. The narrative we tell ourselves becomes our self-fulfilling prophecies. That's why we have to be aware of what's happening here if we want to affect our progress. Our confidence is essential to our success. If you believe you can or you believe you can't, you will either do it or not do it, right? We've heard that before. And our confidence is shaped by our inner voice. Isn't that interesting? It's true though, because if you think about it, I'm not sure if I have this on the next slide or not. No, we're going to get to that in a minute. But what I was going to say is your inner voice is the voice that you hear more than anyone else's voices on earth. Whether even if you have a spouse that you live with, that you spend all your time with, a best friend, your inner voice is the voice that you're going to hear more than anything else. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I liked this quote. The goal is to be more comfortable in your body, not just with your body. So it's not just how you feel about your body, but it's how you feel in your body. Now, if we're going to accomplish that, we're going to need to do two things. We're going to need to set our own standards of what an acceptable body image looks like, and then Remember, we talk about those new pathways in our brain. We have to work hard to reinforce those new standards and beliefs until they become natural and the way that we automatically think. So, how are we going to do this, right? 6 steps here, and we're going to go over these tonight. First, we've got to recognize the unrealistic cultural standards for what beauty and body image are supposed to look like. Second, we've got to set our own standard. Third, we've got to recognize signs of denial and withdrawal. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like. 4, we're going to kind of dive back into our past again, like we did a few weeks ago, and look at how our experiences and our ideals and our beliefs in the past have shaped how we think now. We have to face our fears. That's a tough one. And we have to learn to be our own best friend and best advocate. And that's my favorite part. I love ending on that note. So I just want to reiterate again that some of this content can be tricky, right? It can be hard to face some of these things that are going on in our heads that maybe we're trying to block out, that we don't even want to recognize are there. And so give yourself a lot of grace as we go through this, but also see if you can bring down those walls and take a clear look at what's really happening. As we go through some of these examples, some of them will resonate with you and some of them will be totally foreign to you. And that's okay. Don't shut off just because there's a few examples that don't seem to fit with your paradigm, because somewhere in here is going to be something that speaks to you and is going to help you change your focus and change your inner narrative to propel yourself towards those goals that you're making. I also just want to take a note and say, if you haven't done it yet, go up to the top. Our new workbooks hopefully will be in the office next week. Hopefully we're almost done printing these off every week. But if you haven't had a chance, download the workbook section for tonight's content and work through it on paper, because again, writing things down, taking them from your brain onto paper is such a powerful way to solidify them. I've said this before. I just want to make one more note on the workbook. Don't be caught up in trying to fill in every blank. If you don't have an answer for the question, don't worry about that. Just let the inspiration come freely and then write down what comes. And it doesn't matter if it completely fits the narrative of what's on the paper. Okay, so with that, let's jump into this. Let's start with challenging cultural standards. I think this is something that we've heard a lot about maybe in the last 10 years. There started to be a lot of awareness surrounding this issue of unrealistic cultural beauty standards. But even if you've heard it a million times before, it's really helpful to kind of go over this again so that you can really start to believe what you're hearing, right? Society's standards of beauty changes over time, but it's almost always, I would say even more than frequently, it's almost always at odds with what most people's genetic makeup is, right? What you're seeing on TV, most people just aren't built like that. And then I would go even further to say that even those with what we call ideal genetics to look the way that the media is showing us we're supposed to look, that's not even real. And I want to draw your attention to this website here, this YouTube clip that I've included here. If you haven't had a chance to watch, this is a Dove commercial from, probably a long time ago, maybe 15 or 20 years ago even, but it's a powerful reminder of how computerized so many of these expectations have become. So it's a 2-minute clip. I've watched it with my kids. We had some great discussions about it, but if you haven't had a chance, I would copy that for later because you'll enjoy that. I'm actually going to have Dr. Schill, who's watching in the background here, copy paste that to the chat window as well so that you have that in a little bit. Okay, so consider the following thoughts. This one was really interesting for me when I read through this. For women, what is the cultural standard now? If you look at movie stars, supermodels, compared to what it used to be, the women's standard now is a masculine, muscle-toned body, fairly narrow hips, a little bit of female curve, but it's slight and it's become very masculine and muscular. When I first read that, I thought, oh, that's not right. But then I started to look around and think about it, and I thought that's really true. It's not nearly as curvy as what used to be the standard, right? So many health experts now believe that the desire to achieve this pretty unnatural shape for most women has helped create a strong demand for breast implants and liposuction. Now, there's no problem with that, but the point here is just to reiterate that, are we now needing surgical procedures and whatever it is, whether it's Botox or liposuction or whatever, are we requiring surgical procedures to achieve a standard instead of recognizing what a natural standard should be, right? That is kind of an interesting thought. For men, looking well-toned has replaced looking well-fed. So, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, being well-fed, so actually having some weight on you was a sign of prosperity, right? And now we want this totally toned look. And again, if you're looking at, let's go back to this picture here. If you're looking at these pictures that we look at to say this is what the male tone body looks like, most people never look like that, even if they work out for hours and hours a day and eat nothing but salads, right? A lot of these doctored pictures are either doctored through the computers or individuals that are taking steroid medications or other medications to enhance those muscles. A lot of the standards today are not actually naturally achieved very often. And that's just a really good reminder for us. Again, there's no problem with, if that's not to judge anyone who has done any of these procedures, as much as to say, let's reevaluate what our standards should look like, right? Okay, so let's also consider the fact that we're talking about achieving optimal health, not optimal body image, right? And we've talked before about how body image naturally follows health as we kind of focus on different metrics for success. We tend to feel a lot more confident in our bodies. But think about these standards that we've been looking at, right? Movie stars and models. How many of them are actually healthy? Right? How many of them, we've heard stories about extreme examples of movie stars doing crazy extreme diets to lose this much for a certain role. How much of that is healthy? And is that the standard that we want to be following, right? Okay, so with that thought, then what is the standard that you want to set for yourself? So ask yourself this question. I actually didn't have this in the workbook this week. So if you want to include this in your notes, if you have something come to your mind, what is your standard of what your acceptable body image, what is that based on? And just think really hard about that for a minute. If you think about, if I just looked like this, and you may not even realize what you had in your head is that standard of an acceptable body image, right? But if you think about that, then it's easy to identify, okay, do I really want it to be based on that? Or do I want it to be based on something else? I love this picture of this gentleman running. I feel like, unlike some of the pictures in the previous slides, this looks like a real person, right? With a real body that has working hard to be healthy and to be active. And I think that we don't have to have this doctored picture of perfection to feel confident and healthy in our own bodies, right? Okay, so the good news is this. When we shift our mindset towards the goals that are health focused, then we can let go of some of these image focused focus goals that we tend to have in the back of our subconscious, right? It will free us from the cultural expectations as we base our success on the metrics, and also clearly define your desired lifestyle. I heard at a meeting once years ago that, and I can't back up this fact, but I heard that Jennifer Aniston was working out something like 8 hours a day when she was cast in Friends or something to maintain her slim figure. And so part of the thing here too is recognizing, I could achieve a certain body type if I was willing to sacrifice my lifestyle for it. And so recognizing this is the lifestyle I want, these are the metrics I'm focused on, this is how I can be happy where I'm at, right? Okay, so the next step then is recognizing signs in ourselves. And withdrawal, denial, this sounds kind of vague. So let's kind of look at what that looks like. This is in your workbook. If you have it in front of you, I want you to just take a second and read through these 5 points. See if any of these apply to you. Again, some of them will, some of them won't. Breeze past the ones that you think that doesn't even apply to me. Although maybe pause for a second, because sometimes we initially think, oh no, that doesn't apply to me. And when we focus on it for just a minute, we realize, you know what, maybe that's more part of my subconscious than I realized. So I think most of us have caught ourselves doing this at some point or another, right? Have you ever avoided looking at yourself in a full-length mirror, or you avoid looking at yourself in a window as you pass by, or do you avoid taking or looking at photographs of yourself? I think that's a really common one that a lot of us have struggled with at different points in our life. This was an interesting one. Do you avoid movement, either because it feels uncomfortable, maybe it's painful, or maybe it just makes you feel uncomfortable, or maybe because you're self-conscious, you're afraid it will attract attention. Um, this is one that you may or may not identify. Do you ever avoid physical touch, either from others or even from yourself? And this isn't just like a platonic, like, putting lotion on your arms or something. Do you avoid those things because you're self-conscious about your appearance? And then do you withdraw from any social activities to avoid unwanted attention, or because you feel self-conscious, or you want to be more invisible? Circle any of those that even a little bit, maybe you think, maybe I have been doing that, right? Okay, so why does that matter? And this is where we really start to dive into what's happening in our minds and how it affects our actions, right? If we're using denial or withdrawal as a coping mechanism, it feeds into this vicious cycle. Look at this kind of spiraling staircase that's kind of spiraling downward, because it feeds our insecurity, which then leads us to more self-destructive habits and behaviors, right? So here's some examples. We have negative feelings about ourselves. We're self-conscious about our appearance. That may lead us to withdraw socially. Well, when we're, one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine that we talk about in further months is how important social connection is to a happy and well-balanced lifestyle. So the more we socially withdraw, then the more the more negative feelings we have about ourselves, and then the cycle continues, right? And then we continue this pattern of withdrawal. Okay, so here's another example. Feeling self-conscious about your body, or not appreciating your body, or not loving your body, maybe increases your sedentary lifestyle. So you're less active. And because you're less active, then that leads to more weight gain, which then leads to more self-conscious and self-loathing thoughts, right? So it's this vicious cycle of, what's happening in our mind, perpetuating our actions and behaviors, and then on goes the cycle. So that's why we have to work so hard here to be able to move forward and progress. So here's another example. Researchers report that people who are overweight are more aware of weight gain than weight loss. This is really interesting to me. And you may think that's not true for me at all, or you may think, oh, that really is true for me. Now, this means that they can carry the image and feelings of being overweight even after they lose the weight. Okay, so just be aware that may be something that you have to kind of process through. So maybe some reasons for this could be fear of failure that blocks our ability to see ourselves accurately. I think every single one of us has been uncomfortable with our bodies at some point in time. If you haven't ever, then come tell me how, because I certainly have been. And I think that when we're afraid of failure and when we're feeling poorly about ourselves, then we see through a distorted lens, and we can't even see our progress sometimes when we're too down on ourselves, right? Frustration or embarrassment if a 20-pound loss isn't noticeable. Has anybody ever experienced that? It's like, I've worked so hard, 20 pounds came off and nobody even noticed. And so you're more aware of that 1 pound you gained than like if you make a 5 or 10 or 20 pound progress. But also something that can serve as a mental block is being aware of the weight gain can serve as a mental protection against anticipated criticism. So you almost feel like being overly self-critical then somehow protects you from other people's judgment and criticism. So that's something to think about as well. Okay, so just to summarize this point that we've been over, learning to be comfortable with ourselves even before we've lost the weight, if we can learn to love ourselves where we're at today, then we can clear the mental fog that blocks us from achieving those goals, and also keeps us from viewing our progress rationally and overcoming our insecurities. So that is so powerful. Okay, so let's go back into our past again. We did this 2 weeks ago. We talked a lot about patterns in our families, but look at this list now and see if there was anything that you can remember about when your image of yourself may have changed, right? Do you remember the point at which, or the period of life at which you started to feel self-conscious? I love this picture of this kid jumping in puddles. This is not one of my kids, but it could be. I actually have dozens of pictures of my own kids that look just like this. But I love this because I look at my kids, and especially my girl, and I see this happy, carefree, confident kid that is just free moving and free spirited and doesn't have a care in the world and doesn't think a thing about what anybody else thinks about her body image. And I just want her so badly to be able to hold on to that. So can you think of a time, if you have struggled with negative body image, that started? Was it, let's see, was it when you were a child? Were you overweight as a child and self-conscious about that? Were you teased or criticized? Did you struggle as an adolescent and become more uncomfortable with the attention that it brought? This is an interesting one, right? Did you feel pressure as a teen or young adult to maintain a certain body size because of an activity you were involved in? Whether it was wrestling or ballet or just any sports that you felt like, I have to maintain this body type to be successful, right? Maybe did you struggle with weight and social skills? And was it easy to blame the weight for the lack of meaningful relationships? That's kind of an interesting one. At any point in your life, was your self-worth or success, I added this one, so it's not in your workbook. Was your self-worth or success tied to weight or body image in your mind? I think that was something that came to mind for me, is especially as a young single adult doing a lot of dating and that kind of stuff. I remember being terrified of my body changing or gaining weight, because I thought, what would happen if, would I stop having dating opportunities? Would I not get married? That kind of thing. That's an irrational fear, but it was a fear that I struggled with, right? Did you gain weight with pregnancies for women or for both men and women? This is particularly applicable, I think, to our family. Did you struggle with the stresses of raising a family, with school, with work, with life in general, and struggle with feelings of losing yourself and that identity of your body changing with the stresses and the lack of time to meal prep and to exercise like you used to be able to do? Was that a struggle? So here's some things to consider. And this may seem a little bit unrelated, but stick with me here because it kind of comes full circle. Eating temporarily distracts us from our problems and reduces our stress levels. Now, there's a couple reasons for that, right? One of many, is the dopamine, the very real chemicals that are released as the pleasure centers of our brains react to food. And that's part of why we struggle so much with breaking these cycles with emotional eating, is because we get real chemical releases from eating. But as we also know, those are temporary releases, and then sets in the guilt and shame and the consequences of giving into those emotional reactions, right? So I want you to think for a second, brainstorm with me. What are some of the consequences of emotional eating that don't even have to do with weight gain? So the bullet point above that, the long-term consequences of our weight gain ultimately cause more problems than it solves. And we know this, right? But I think it helps to stop and really think through that for a minute. So drop them in the comments. What are some of the things that you can think of? What are some of the consequences? We've talked about guilt and shame. We've talked about weight gain. But other than that, I mean, for me, I know, if I give in and eat those 5 cookies sitting on the counter because I had a stressful day and I deserve it, then I don't feel all that great for the rest of the evening. I don't feel terrible. I'm not, I'm not necessarily like allergic to some of the things, like some people have serious reactions, but I don't feel as good. I feel more sluggish. I'm less likely to be active. What other things can you think of? Kind of drop them in the comments as you think about them as we keep moving on. Potato chips. I love potato chips too. Yeah, bloating, just crampy, you just don't feel as good. You just don't feel as good, right? And you don't feel as confident because you don't feel like your body feels as good. So there's just a lot of consequences that if we can train ourselves to stop and think through those consequences, it doesn't mean we'll never want to reach for a cookie again, but it does mean we will make less emotional decisions regarding food, right? So developing effective coping mechanisms for stress can minimize weight gain and contribute to enhanced self-esteem, not just because we're happier with our bodies, but we're happier with our own discipline and our ability to make choices that we feel good about, right? Okay, let's talk about facing our fears for a minute. Again, this is maybe one of the hardest ones because we don't like to confront our fears. Most of us don't like to even acknowledge that those fears exist. So I'm going to read through these. Again, I want you to just take a second. Don't write off the rest of the list because one doesn't apply to you, but also pause and consider maybe whether there's some truth to this for you. Not everything will be true, and that's okay, but there will probably be more truths here than you initially recognize. Okay, so which ones of these apply? If I gain weight, I'll be less physically desirable. I think most of us have had that fear at some point in our lives, right? If I lose weight, I won't have an excuse for my unmet goals. Whether that's promotions at work, relationships, is there anything that you've been blaming on your weight that you're not accomplishing or you're not progressing or you're not succeeding in, that you'll lose that excuse if you lose the weight? These are hard questions, right? If I lose the weight, I'll lose the sense of power or intimidation. This is more true sometimes for men who kind of have part of their identity is kind of like being bigger and intimidating, maybe. If I lose the weight, I may lose professional credibility. So my weight signals I'm serious about my job. If I lose weight, I may feel more isolated from friends or peers who label me as image focused or who are jealous of my new appearance. I think that's a pretty legitimate fear. If I lose the weight, I'm afraid I'll resent the physical attraction I receive because I'm the same person that I was before. Also a legitimate concern. All of these are legitimate concerns, so I don't need to say that after everyone, but interesting to think about. If I lose the weight, I'm afraid I'll be more attractive to others and have a harder time staying faithful to my spouse or significant other. If I lose the weight, I'll be less comfortably invisible and others will expect more of me. I thought that one was interesting. If I lose the weight, I'll be more vulnerable to people who may want to do me physical harm. Humorously, if I can just step aside and bring some comic relief to this, my daughter has a cake making business, which I know is a little bit ironic considering what we do, but she loves to decorate cakes. And she just did a presentation last night for her group at church, displaying pictures of all of the cakes that she's made over the last few years and decorated. And she found a meme that said, it's hard if you're overweight, it's harder to, what did it go? If you're overweight, it's harder to kidnap you. Stay safe, eat cake. So there you go. If I lose weight, I may resent people for treating me differently than they already did before. So like if they treat me with more respect, if people want to be my friend when they did before, then I would really resent that because again, I'm the same person that I've always been. If I lose the weight, I'll get unwanted attention and that would accompany judgment if I regain the weight. I've heard that one a lot, right? I don't want people to notice and then judge me when I regain it, right? If I lose the weight, I'll experience constant pressure and anxiety about giving up parts of my lifestyle that I enjoy. This is another one that we hear a lot. I don't want to give up my favorite foods. I don't want to give up my favorite desserts. I don't want to give up those comfort foods that make me feel so much better when I've had a bad day, or hobbies, right? Like decorating cakes or barbecuing or catering food or all of these things that bring so much joy to our lives. And I won't take a lot of time on this, but I do want to assure you that lifestyle is our focus and that with moderation, you don't have to completely give up a lot of these things that have brought you joy. So keep that in mind as we keep going. If I lose the weight and then regain it, I'm not sure I'll have the motivation to lose it again. I've definitely felt that one. If I put in the work to lose the weight and it's not enough, I don't know if I can deal with the frustration of my own unmet expectations. And if I lose the weight, I may resent myself for the ways my confidence struggled at a higher weight. So the power in this, it's painful at first, but the power in this is understanding what our roadblocks are so that we can start to confront them. Now, some of these roadblocks are real legitimate concerns, right? And others are a little bit irrational, and we can recognize that and we can kind of overcome those. The expectations one, let's see. Let me see if I can find it. Expectations, where did that go? Oh, if I put in the work to lose the weight and it's not enough, I don't know if I can deal with the frustration of my own unmet expectations. That's powerful, isn't it? I really resonated with that one as well. Okay, so let's think through this now. We all self-sabotage our best efforts. We look back at that list and we can start to understand why we're self-sabotaging, right? Sometimes it's so easy to get frustrated with ourselves and we're like, why am I doing this? I want this. This is my goal. But why am I sabotaging my own best efforts? But then you look at that list of fears and start to identify them and you start to say, that's why. So then you identify this unmet need or this fear and you can address that. You can work through that fear. You can recognize what's rational and what's irrational. You can recognize how to meet that need in a different way so that then you can keep moving forward, right? So the danger is until we address our past fears or our fears and our current coping mechanisms, regaining the lost weight could actually be a part of our subconscious moving back into our comfort zone. That's a powerful statement, isn't it? We brought this slide up before, and I love this slide. The comfort zone, a lot of times we're unhappy with where we're at, but we're way too comfortable to break out of it because we know that right outside the comfort zone, we have to confront the fear zone. And that is something most of us don't want to do. One thing that I've had to do, I was actually just thinking about this on my way home, driving a kid from carpool today, is I've got to be okay with being uncomfortable, right? If I'm going to make a change, I have to stop fighting this, oh, I'm hungry, or oh, I'm hurting, or any of those things. I have to be okay with uncomfortable and just say, you know what? That's okay, because what I want at the end of this uncomfortable is worth it. And what's at the end is this learning zone and then growth zone, right? And that's powerful. So think about that. Um, don't erase your progress as you're trying to move back into your comfort zone. Okay. So with that said, one of the things that's so critical about this process is for us to remain at this lower weight that we want to be at long enough to allow ourselves to work out some of these conflicting emotions. We're going to feel both happiness and pride in our results and also fear surrounding some of the things that we discussed. So this is where we come in, right? We only offer now a 12-month program for that purpose because we know that your success goes so far beyond just that initial weight loss. The success comes from adapting our mindsets and shifting our behaviors to be able to keep it there long term. And that's more than just changing our mind about how we feel about things. It's confronting those fears and insecurities to work through having a totally new identity in some ways, right? Because you're adopting a totally new lifestyle. And that's what we're here to do. And that's what our whole program is designed around. Okay, so here's some tips to get started. If you're thinking, man, this all sounds really good, but what do I even do about it? Again, some of these will sound really crazy to you. And again, just stop for a minute, consider whether it could be helpful. But you don't have to adopt all of them. Just pick one or two that speaks to you. Start forcing yourself to get a little more comfortable with mirrors. That's the first place to start. Just accept it and force yourself to do it until it becomes more comfortable. Physical touch was something that one of Nestle's modules suggested that I thought was an interesting thought. Just even start practicing with lotion on your hands, right? On your arms, and just notice, does your body cringe at that? Do you withdraw from that or try to avoid it? Or is it comfortable for you? Movement, if you're uncomfortable moving in front of other people, start at home. I love this picture of this lady dancing. Start at home in a private place and get comfortable moving by yourself, and then slowly allow yourself to have the confidence to do it more in front of other people. Explore your own biases. Think about what you think about somebody else who's maybe overweight or who is what you consider to be a desirable weight. What are the thoughts that you have? What are the assumptions that you make? And as you notice your assumptions about others, then you can start to recognize the negativity that maybe you're telling yourself about you. How does recognizing those inner thoughts help you change your distorted thinking? Think through that for a minute, right? And then finally, this is if you're an artsy person or if you like to write, just start writing or drawing or making a collage. Think about where your life is today and where you want it to be, and write or draw those thoughts down on paper and see if that kind of helps open up some of your vision along those lines. Okay, so finally, we're going to end with this. This is my favorite one. Just be kind to yourself. So if we're learning to confront all of these fears, looking into our past to see where it all began, and then learning to accept ourselves where we're at, we have to be willing to accept ourselves. Yeah, just like I said, just where we're at today, so that we can then accept ourselves moving forward. Because the irony is, and this is kind of what we just talked about, if we don't accept ourselves where we are today, we're going to have a hard time accepting ourselves after we've made the progress we want to. And that's so interesting, because in the end, it's really about the confidence that we have to have in ourselves. So take just a second. I know this is painful. We did this 2 weeks ago and we're going to do it again. I want you to just offhand, I do this with my kids sometimes. Don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Just the first thing that comes to your head, list your 5 best qualities that have nothing to do with your physical appearance, things that you love about yourself, things that you're proud of. And then I want you to list your 5 best physical features. They don't have to be weight related, or they can be. What do you like about your physical appearance? When you look in the mirror, what do you appreciate about yourself? I'm going to give you just maybe 1 minute to kind of think through that. Write it down on your paper. Okay, if you're still thinking, I encourage you, after we end here in just a few minutes, sit with this until you can fill that out. Just see how long it takes and see if you can honestly come up with that list. It's so important to learn to appreciate and love the things about yourself that are worth loving. And there are so many things. I love this sign. You are worthy of love. So know your own power. You are the voice you hear in your head more than anyone else. This is what we alluded to at the beginning, right? Even a spouse or a significant other that you live with and spend all your time with and share everything with, you're hearing your own voice even more than theirs. So think about that, right? What if you have, like I am blessed to have, a spouse who is endlessly kind and complimentary of you and constantly building you up, but you're still telling yourself all of these negative things about yourself? Their voice is not going to be able to overpower yours. It will help for sure. I don't mean to undermine that, but your voice has to be positive if you're going to build that confidence. Nobody else can build that confidence for you. So you're both your greatest source of encouragement and empowerment, but you're also your greatest source of discouragement and negativity. So ask yourself today or this week or this month, which one is winning? And I think we all do a little bit of both, right? But which one is winning for you? So here's a good example of how our self-talk can change our behavior. Okay, this is kind of a cheesy example, but it helps illustrate it really well. Chris comes home from a track meet feeling disappointed that he didn't win his race. He'd been training really hard, didn't get the result that he wanted. So self-talk number 1, I should just quit. Why even bother? I'm too fat to be on that team anyway. So what is his action based on this narrative that he just told himself? Well, he goes to the kitchen. He's already believing that he's too fat and that it's hopeless. So he goes to look for something to eat to make him feel better. He grabs a bag of chips, polishes it off in front of the TV. Okay. The thought leads to the behavior, which then perpetuates the thought, right? It cements that thought in his mind and helps him really believe that. So here's the alternative: self-talk. I didn't win, but I almost beat my personal best time. I practiced hard this week, and tomorrow I'm going to go ask my coach for some pointers to improve my form. Now, I've watched my kids do this who are really excited about sports. I can tell you what they're going to do is grab a quick power snack. Well, my littler kids are probably going to reach for candy unless I give them a power snack, but going to grab a snack. And then the first thing they're going to do is they're going to run outside and try to make it better. They're going to see if they can go faster. Mom, time me again, right? Because what they're believing in their head is, I can do that. I can do better next time. I bet I can do even better. I'm going to learn and I'm going to keep trying. So the thoughts we tell ourselves changes the actions that come after. Okay, so we're going to practice our super self-talk to close out tonight. I'm going to read these out loud again. Some of these will resonate with you more than others. Again, I know I've said that several times tonight, but think or circle the ones that speak to you. And also drop in the comments if you have one that's not on this list that works really well for you so we can share it. I'm taking one step at a time to reach my goals. I know I can do this. My weight does not define who I am as a person. I am amazing no matter how much I weigh. I like to move my body. My body is powerful and strong. I love that because that's changing the metrics of what we're measuring success by, right? I've talked to a lot of people who have developed really healthy, positive body images who say, I'm not worried about my weight because I feel strong. And how cool is that, right? I'm prioritizing my health, which is more important than prioritizing my size. Again, with those metrics, so powerful. Nothing can stop me from succeeding. I am resilient and will keep trying. I love that one. Even if I have a setback, I can start again. This is another one of my favorites. I have never failed until I stopped trying. Seriously, think about that for a minute, right? You've never failed until you quit trying. Eating when I'm hungry doesn't make sense. I'm going to find something else to do. I love that idea of using logic, right? To kind of talk yourself through it. Okay, this doesn't make sense. This isn't what we eat for. So I'm going to go find something else to make me feel better if I'm sad or stressed or angry or bored or, all of those things. Okay, what else? Which one did you like the best? And which ones did you come up with that aren't on this list? I'd love for you to share. Strong is far more important to your longevity than your weight. I love that. Yeah, we've talked several times with guests in the last couple of months about finding your purpose, and knowing that you want to age gracefully can be a powerful motivator, right? Health is wealth. I love that. Never failed until I've stopped trying. I love that one. That's one of my favorites. It seems silly, but that was a huge aha moment for me, maybe about 10 years ago, where I was like, oh, I don't ever have to feel like I've failed as long as I'm willing to try again. That's powerful to me. Okay. So with that, take just a minute in your webinar notebook. The challenge for this week is creating an energy in and an energy out goal. An alternative to that, if you want to use the notes section, is to use one or two of these mantras that we just talked about. I'm going to go back to this screen so you can look at them again and write them down in your notebook. Write one or two down in your notebook that you feel like will motivate you this week when you feel frustrated or discouraged, or when you're really battling that negative self-talk. I think it's important as we wrap up tonight to recognize that I hope you're coming away inspired tonight to talk to yourself in a different way, but it's going to be an uphill battle at first. Anytime we start a new habit that it goes against the grain of what our brains want to do is going to be a fight. And so if you jump out of this webinar thinking, I totally can do this, and I hope you do, and tomorrow you find yourself flooded with negative thoughts, know that you're normal, and that, again, you just keep trying and you keep telling yourself these mantras, and having something written down that's really concrete and solid is going to help you through those moments where you feel like it's just pouring at you like a fire hose. But as you continue to fight it with these powerful, super self-talk mantras, then little by little, those negative thoughts are going to decrease and your confidence will continue to grow. So I encourage you this week to talk to yourself the way you would your child or your best friend, and change the way that face those fears and change the way that you approach your own growth by telling yourself that you can do this, and you can. And the other piece to this is accountability, and that's why you have us. So continue to press forward, believing and telling yourself that your future is so bright, and know that we will be here to help you every step of the way. I'm so excited. We're going to start in April with this new April challenge. I hope you'll all join us. Please sign up. Again, you can hit that link at the top of the page, at the top of the chat window, And it going along with that in April, our entire month of April is all about physical activity and how to find what works for you. So I've got great guest speakers lined up. I've got great material for you. I hope you'll join us again next week and next month. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. We're so glad you were here. Have a great night. We'll see you next week.